I have shared a story around the state of a conversation that I had with a man in Austin, Texas, and I think it's very illustrative of where we are as a state, so I will close with that this evening. I began early on reaching out to the Hispanic community in this state. It's well over 33%, and most audiences that we're talking to look a lot like this one, not 33% Hispanic, not 33% Black. We have a big, diverse state, and if we're going to care for our citizens, we all need to be represented. And I began trying to reach out and have the conversation early on. And some months ago, I interviewed with a man named Gabriel Bruzon. Mr. Bruzon is the editor of El Mundo newspaper in Austin, Texas. It is a Spanish language weekly paper, and my husband and I had both grown up in South Texas. Lots of Mexican influence there, and Garcias and Gonzalez's and Pettis's and a few Medinas, I'd say, but I had never met anyone named Bruzon, and I was curious about the origin of his name. He said he was from Cuba. His family had been there for 4 generations. And then I got really curious, wanting to know how he had gotten out of Cuba. I had thought for years in talking about, do our candidates understand the difference between things that protect freedom and those that destroy it, that we think that when the isms, when socialism, communism, fascism, Marxism come to America, they'll come with purple spots or something, and we'll know those candidates that are going to implement those totalitarian sorts of ideas. What's the difference, Mr. Bruzon, if I were to take a picture of you 3 years ago standing on the street in communist dictatorship Cuba, and I took a picture of you today standing on the street in Constitutional Republic, Austin, Texas? What's the difference? And he said the man in Cuba had no dreams. Everything was free. Healthcare was free, education was free, but we had no dreams. He said I couldn't plan where I would live or where I would work or where I would go. And I thought that was pretty poignant. We're headed there, aren't we?
Yes, we
as a country?
Yes.
We are headed there as a country, and we have in this cycle, I believe, not because of a Debra Medina, but because one lady stepped into the ring and decided to challenge all of those big government ideas.
Yeah.
But because y'all stepped up this way, because I took a step of faith, that was one thing, but it was you stepping up beside me in this campaign that has given us that opportunity. I got a report this morning that as of yesterday, in the city of San Antonio, they have already voted more people than voted in the last election. They've got 3 days left, Thursday, Friday, and Election Day, and about 40% of the total vote is cast on Election Day. So the fact that we've already got more votes cast as of Wednesday, with 2 early voting days left and an Election Day left, people are voting in this primary. I believe that we're going to win this race. Win this race. And some of you will go home and say, oh, she's dreaming. But remember that this is a campaign that wasn't going to ever register. And then it was maybe going to have a couple of points. And then it was maybe going to cause a runoff. Why doesn't she just sit down and shut up? Because now she's going to cost us all this money and we're going to have a runoff in Texas. 2, she's going to be in the runoff. But I don't think anybody can quantify what's happening in early voting and how many Texans are turning out. Be encouraged that we can champion, we can vote for, we can support someone who doesn't have allegiance to special interest, who is a common sense, hardworking, everyday, average citizen who's had a passion for public policy, who's been preparing for over a year to be our governor. That I want to step in and lead for 4 years to reestablish the proper balance between a sovereign Texas and a federal government. And if we do that in Texas, what will it mean for our nation? I think we have an opportunity not just to dream again in Texas, but to share that dream with the country. And the country is watching. The country is watching, and the world is watching. We are getting calls and emails from Germany and other countries in Europe. People are watching what's happening here in Texas. I was in Little Lytle, Texas, west of San Antonio earlier this week, and I walked in and there was a man from New York. He had flown, he was a reporter from New York City, he had flown from New York to San Antonio and driven out to Lytle to cover this campaign. The country is watching. Be encouraged that we can make a difference. We've been railing against Washington, trying to get them to do it right for years to no avail. How about we try to restore a sovereign state as our founders envisioned, and maybe in doing that, get Washington back to where she ought to be, so that this country again dreams and shows the world what freedom and prosperity ought to look like. Be my privilege to serve you in that way. Thank you all for coming out tonight.